How about we keep our promises and tell the truth? Yeah, I'm talking about politics. This is Scott Ott with Bill Whittle now, and Bill, Thomas Friedman at the New York Times, your good buddy over there, has an idea for Joe Biden. And he says that the former vice president and presumptive Democratic...
Stop right there. Just stop right there. The plan is going to fail.
It doesn't have anything to do with economics. Does that help?
No, it's an idea for Joe Biden. It's something he'd have to remember and repeat.
So his people could remember
we'll see you next
time. So here's the idea.
Maybe the teleprompter will remember it. Go ahead.
Friedman says that the former vice president and presumptive Democratic nominee should not agree to do any debates with Donald Trump unless the Trump campaign were willing to concede two conditions. Number one is that Donald Trump would release his tax returns from 2016 to 2018, which he has long promised to do, and then said the American people didn't care about. And number two, there would be a panel of real-time fact checkers on hand, a panel agreeable to both campaigns, who 10 minutes before the end of the debate would report on any lies or misstatements that they detected during the course of the debate. So as you think about this, Bill, if it were anybody else other than Donald Trump and Joe Biden, would you have any objection to saying, yeah, we want to know if, especially when the president promises he's going to release his tax returns, he should do that. And it's not fair that one candidate has and another candidate hasn't. And number two, what's wrong with having some fact checkers on hand to challenge the people? Because the journalists are, under the hot lights and they're not really ready to fact check on the fly like that. Do you see anything wrong with these proposals?
Was this the Times, did you say?
It was Friedman's column in the Times. Yes, he's the op-ed writer there.
We need professionals because the American people are too stupid to understand the outcome of the two candidates for president of the United States having a discussion with each other. And since the American people are too stupid to understand what's actually being said, too gullible, they'll just believe anything. We are, for their own benefit, of course, going to be there to make sure that they draw the correct conclusions. And we saw this with Twitter not too long ago, where for the first time Twitter said, "Oh well, here's a link to factually accurate information," and that's editorializing, and that means you're not a carrier anymore. You're a producer, and all of your protections go away. Twitter.
Yeah, but this is different, Bill, because they're saying that the fact checkers would be agreeable to both campaigns, not Twitter, which is clearly coming from the left.
Mm-hmm. Well. First of all, the first condition about the tax returns, I'm not Donald Trump. The second condition about the agreeable to both sides things, what they are, Scott, what's going on here is these are reasons for Joe Biden not to debate Donald Trump that sound reasonable and fair. But what they are is they're reasons for Joe Biden to have a fig leaf to not debate Donald Trump. That's all this is about, and that's all this is about. Now, if you were going to go to this business about, well, we won't have a debate unless you release your tax returns. I'm not Donald Trump, but I would be tempted to say, how about if I release my tax returns when Joe Biden takes a publicly recorded, videotaped cognitive ability test? And that would be the end of that debate too, which is the goal. You see, this is the goal. The goal is to put things on the table that are non-starters, that sound reasonable. And that way, you have an excuse for why Joe Biden doesn't have to stand in front of the American people and talk for 2 hours. It doesn't matter whether he's talking to Donald Trump or whether he's talking to Howdy Doody. It doesn't matter. What has to be avoided at all costs is 2 hours of Joe Biden basically off the teleprompter, speaking in front of the American people, and you will see more and more and more of this as we get closer to that momentous time.
I think Thomas Friedman would agree with you to a certain extent on your assertion that this is a way to avoid the debate, because in Friedman's opinion, he doesn't think that Biden needs the debate, but he thinks Trump does. He looks at national polling right now that seems to indicate Biden's surging and says that Trump desperately needs to make an impact with the independents.
Okay, well, since every presidential election in my lifetime, because I came in just under the wire for the 1960 election, every election in my 61-year-old life has had a debate between the two presidential candidates. And if Joe Biden wants to duck away from that, I think that will give the American people and certainly the Trump campaign some things to use in terms of why it is that Joe Biden is breaking away from a tradition, certainly that goes back to Lincoln and Douglas. That wasn't a presidential campaign, but nevertheless, this history of taking your case out in front of the American people, this idea of public debate, having the Lincoln Douglas debate's a great example. I mean, thousands of people would come to these things on foot. They wanted to hear they didn't just want to hear what each person believed in or what they were going to say politically. They wanted to get a sense of the person. They wanted to get a sense of the character. We elect a person to this position. We don't elect policies and we don't elect procedures. We elect characters. And people would like to get to know the character of the person that they are presumably going to vote for. And when you get to Joe Biden, the ability for if the American people see Joe Biden as he actually is, then this election is over before it begins. He knows it. I know it. You know it. The people watching this program know it. Donald Trump knows it. Everybody knows it.
Now, as we record this, I don't have any indication that the Biden campaign is listening to Thomas Friedman or that they will make this proposal to the Trump campaign. But I think even though, Bill, you may think that this is just a fig leaf to get Biden out of the debates, I think a lot of people are going to think it sounds relatively reasonable. If President Trump had not promised to release his tax returns, or if President Trump had already released his tax returns, then you'd have that issue off the table. But this idea of saying, you know what, a lot of information comes at the viewer during the course of a debate. And it's not just that nobody's suggesting the American people are stupid. In fact, he's suggesting that even the journalists who cover this stuff are not equipped in real time to be able to be on stage, on camera, and be able to fact check this stuff. So let's have a backup team of people agreeable to both sides who can fact check this. Why would anybody object to an honest debate where if somebody made a mistake, they could be called on it in real time and you wouldn't have to wait for the spin room or 3 days later when somebody comes out and says, here's all the lies that Joe Biden told during the debate?
My opposition to this is entirely philosophical. If we're talking about a practical matter in terms of who would get hurt worse by this, then I think that Joe Biden is probably not the person who should be calling for a team of fact checkers, because despite what Joe Biden thinks, he's not running against Ronald Reagan. And television wasn't invented in 1830, and other things that are likely to come out of Joe Biden's mouth. And so this is not a political objection to it. It's a philosophical objection to it. This theory of government, this Constitution and this governmental structure is predicated on the idea that the people are capable of governing themselves. The job of the press is to give people information in advance. It is not to put a spin on something that somebody says, and to what he's arguing for is he's arguing for Candy Crowley. He's arguing for somebody who can throw their not inconsequential bulk between a pointed attack on the part of Mitt Romney and a staggered and wobbly Barack Obama, who was saved by a journalist at the last minute. And that might have actually determined the course of the election, because I saw Barack Obama and he was actually speechless. He said, can we, but journalism is here to make sure that the American people come to the right conclusions. And needless to say, as a professional journalist, Candy Crowley in that 2012 debate performed her job of making sure that the American people didn't get to hear a conversation between the two candidates, because that conversation wasn't going well for Candy's fighter. So she basically went in there and blocked the thing. And by the way, the person who really should accept the blame for the outcome of this, I'm just going to say it parenthetically because it needs to be said, is Mitt Romney. When Candy Crowley threw herself in front of that question, Mitt Romney should have simply turned to her and say, we are running for president of the United States of America. You are a journalist who is a moderator. Sit down and shut up. We're talking. That's what he should have said. But No, I don't need a spin machine. And by the way, we're going to fact check? What are we going to do, Scott? Are we going to go to Snopes? Is that where we're going to determine whether things are real or not? You know, that outfit paid for by George Soros. We're going to go to Snopes to fact check, or PolitiFact, another George Soros operation. See, what this is doing is it is attempting to put any kind of a filter between the reality of these two men running for president and the American people. And to say, well, the American people, you know, they may not be well enough informed, or maybe these concepts are a little bit too complicated for them, is evil for two reasons. First of all, because it's not true. This government is dependent on the idea that the citizen is capable of making their own decisions, no matter what the New York Times happens to think about the outcome. And secondly, it's predicated on this vanity and elitism of these New York Times reporters who, as we did in a segment, which I would like to repeat pretty much every week, it was a month ago now, I guess, reporters have sub-average IQs, and they have sub-average ability to control their emotions. And sub-average. And
perhaps the fact checkers could check the reporters too, Bill. Would that make it better?
Yeah, and then we should have interns in checking the fact checkers, and then we should have people sending in their kids to be interns to check the fact checkers who are checking the reporters who are checking the candidates.
Sounds like you're calling for multiple levels of fact checkers and editors. Where have I heard that before?
From places like the New York Times, defending their dinosaur outfit, their propaganda machine against the truth. That would be issued by individual citizens. I'm glad you brought that up, actually. That quote came when blogs started to become popular. And the New York Times, recognizing the threat to their monopoly on information, I don't know if it was the Times, but somebody said that, well, you can't trust these bloggers. I mean, a professional news organization like the New York Times has layers and layers of editors and fact checkers and so on, all of whom are not only wrong, but active liars. So here's the thing about the truth, and this is the great thing about the truth. This is the only reason we're having this conversation right now instead of wandering around in our gulags, is that the truth has a way of being the truth, and that the truth doesn't much care about who delivers it, and it doesn't much care about who lies about it either. It exists. The truth exists in the real world. Joe Biden is mentally unfit to hold a debate, let alone hold the office of President of the United States. That is an embarrassment that the Democrats are dealing with on a daily basis by locking the guy up. And they know what we knew in 2012 and 2016 and all the way back. The reason that the debates are so important is because it is the only time that the American people get to see and hear these people speak without being told what they said by the press, who will immediately, I mean, upon them shaking hands and walking off stage, will immediately begin to tell you what they said. But during those 2 hours, 3 times, you get to actually hear and see these people, and the press can't stand that because it undoes all of their work. It undoes all of their careful preparation to give you the idea that Joe Biden is a wise and experienced statesman when Joe Biden doesn't know what state he's in. And I mean physical location state, not to mention his mental state. And it's going to get worse. It's going to get much worse. And everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. I know it. You know it. The audience knows it. The Democrats know it. The Republicans know it. The only person who doesn't know that Joe Biden is a stooge to get at least through the convention so that the Democratic Party can pick a candidate, probably the only person in America who doesn't realize that that's what's going on, is Joe Biden.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Campaign 2020 rolls on, Bill Whittle now will be there to bring the analysis, put it in context, and all of that done from a bedrock of solid principles that are time-tested and have lasted the generations. We can do this only because of the members at BillWhittle.com who fund not only 20 of these shows each month, but 20 episodes of Right Angle and more at BillWhittle.com. If you're a member there, you get to see some backstage content and get access to some private communication tools that the non-members don't get. We'd like to invite you into that family, and I think you're going to enjoy getting to know the Liberty lovers at BillWhittle.com. So just go to that website, click the big green Become a Member button, and join us right now. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.